What's your view on the carbon footprint of the construction industry and the wider built environment, and then also what are your thoughts on the UK's net zero targets?
Well, I mean, the level of work that we do, we're not really brought into the. Well, I mean, like obviously, carbon footprint is a massive issue, generally speaking, but if we get a design, that's not really down to us. I mean, that's down to appliances. I think, what a customer specifies what appliance they want and how much what that appliance's power consumption is going to be. So we have to design to that.
Yeah.
If I'm honest, I think on the bigger sites, it's kind of othered.
Okay.
You'll do your site induction and they'll go like, waste management's really important in the environment, but once it's gone in the bin, it's forgotten about. Nobody really thinks about it, where it goes or what happens to it. And I think there's a real lack in connection with what we're using and doing every day. Everybody just chucks stuff away.
Okay. Do you think that's limited to the construction industry?
No. That's I mean, look, I didn't want to get too much into it, but we're quite privileged here in the West. Those raw materials don't come out of our countries anymore. So they're coming out of country we don't have any connection to. So it's very labour intensive.
Yeah.
And all that stuff gets here. And as a company, there's not a lot we can do about that right now because we don't have that much of a say-so. But what can we do after that point? What's the best thing that we can do? And as Cycling Sparks, okay, well, we'll transport in the most low carbon way possible.
Right.
That's, you've got to start thinking this two-tier way just because it comes in. So
yeah.
I'm messing up a bit. But you've got to think, you've got to have more of a connection where things are coming from, essentially.
Yeah.
And what's involved in getting it out of the ground.
Yeah.
To where you're using it.
So really and I know you mentioned this before we started recording, but, and you said quite rightly, by the way, that if the lower carbon products aren't available,
yes,
what are you supposed to do?
Exactly.
In your position?
Exactly. I think this is manufacturers really need to take it up a notch with bioplastics and stuff like that. They really need to look for strong, workable solutions for that, because if the products are there, much like my customers, I'll give it a go. I'll try it.
Okay.
And if it works just as well as the previous product, then I'll use it. But it's very little of it. I know Vargo did their green line recently with their connectors, and I think it's supposed to use a certain amount of less plastic and it's supposed to perform the same. But that's the only thing I've really seen.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not really any fan manufacturers or there's one of the things I just saw massive waste on was packaging.
Yes.
So I was fitting a load of emergency bulkheads once. It's just before I left to start Cycling Sparks, and it came in a box. And inside were little boxes, and they were covered in plastic.
Yeah.
And then I opened that, and then that was covered in plastic. And then the bulkhead came in 2 bits, that was covered in plastic. And it was just like, this is such a massive waste. I'm not saying it doesn't look good, the product, but we don't need to be doing it like this anymore.
Yeah.
You've got to start thinking differently about it.
Yeah, I mean, I really do agree. And look, this discussion isn't. We haven't chosen this topic because Metpro is this beacon of carbon neutrality. We do offset our domestic emissions.
Yeah. Okay.
So we're doing that because we know we have a responsibility. You can't ignore it. But we're not blind to the fact that we are in a position to perhaps do more.
Yeah.
So it is on the agenda to start looking at alternative materials and packaging, like you say. That's something we've discussed before. And is also on the agenda. So we're now looking to move forward with a dedicated internal committee.
Okay.
Our carbon reduction plan is going to be
Right.
properly thought out at director level and give us some key action points and milestones to hit in, as we progress forwards to our ultimate goal, which is it just needs a bit of defining as well. So we have got work to do. But what I like about this conversation is that we're sat here now, contractor and manufacturer, and you're telling us what you think, how we can help this particular situation, which people will not be quiet about, justifiably. And I think that's one factor that's been missing is that traditionally we wouldn't speak to you. We would speak to the wholesaler who then speaks to you.
Yeah.
So I think having this dialogue throughout the supply chain means that we can go and is more of an impetus for us to go and start looking at alternatives, because then we can talk to you. We're not going to sell it to you, but we can talk to you, understand the demand, see if it works, do some on-site, real world testing, in the hopes that kind of drives adoption quicker.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean, because I've said this so many times on this as part of these discussions, and privately as well. We are an industry, I think, that is quite rooted in tradition, and we don't exactly, when innovation comes along, it's why it's so hard for us to really get these innovations out there, and we do get a bit of flack for it, mainly around that you're removing skills from the job, but then when we talk to people about it, like, well, what are people on about? So there seems this just, I don't know,
well, there's a certain amount of cynicism about what we're doing within the industry. I mean, actually,
really,
well, there was. I mean, I have to say less so now. People are generally quite supportive of it.
Good.
Like, of what we're doing, but there was a big like, well, how you can do this, how you can do this, now it won't work, and all the rest of it. But it's that kind of, you have to see it through.
Yeah.
You can't just have an idea and go, they said it was rubbish, and then that's it, I'm not going to use it. It needs to develop and grow and like refine.
Absolutely. It's like real work. We've got to do some real work, and I know that we touched on this beforehand as well. But I do personally get the feeling in the climate conversation, and in other conversations. I mean, data was one that we've spoken about before, product data. There seems to be, it's a bit, I'm not looking to cause issues, but this is just my personal opinion, so it's not necessarily the opinion of Metpro, but it seems to be a bit virtue signaling, like we need to do that to tick a box, and then we can get this credential and life's good.
Well, I think, if I'm honest, like, I think there's a lot of corporate stuff, that the tick box stuff, and you've got people ticking boxes like, I don't actually understand this. So the people that are ticking the boxes going, I'm just told to do this.
My customer wants it, so I'll do it.
Exactly, but they don't really have a connection with what's going on, or they don't. It's maybe too overwhelming, but like, there is that. I mean, I think, in bigger corporations and companies, they'd be like, right, have we tick this box? Yes, and all the rest of it. But then again, there was a client of ours who said, like, we use really good electricians, but they don't have a zero carbon plan where you're automatically it.
Right.
So again, it's like providing that solution there and going like, well, don't think about it.
Yeah.
It's a really overwhelming big sort of subject, and if people aren't properly trained in it, it will just become a tick box. But also the solutions need to be there.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
I do think educating people on it is so vital. I mean, I hate talking about things that I don't understand fully, so I'll always try and hold off. And I need to, as a caveat for myself, really, as a disclaimer on this one, I'm not the most au fait with climate control. I tend to get the information from news channels, and then other people have heard. So there's I've got to put some impetus on myself to go and understand it better.